Arts Gallery. Today, I want to talk about the components of a good research question. So, we're going to look at some of the characteristics of how you can draft effective research questions. Remember, we've already talked about how we're going to use the CARS model to establish a territory, which is talking about why this particular topic or this particular area of research is important. We're going to be establishing a niche by talking about what's been done and then also what gaps remain in the research. And then as we craft our thesis statement, we're going to talk about how we intend to fill those gaps in the research. But ultimately, we're going to need to come up with several polished, focused research questions that help us to do what we say we're going to do with our thesis statement. Remember, we're trying to fill that gap in the literature, and we're going to do that by answering these research questions. So let's talk a little bit about what makes a good research question. So we're simply going to go over the characteristics of a good question today. And first, it needs to be clear. So remember, we said that it's okay to have this overarching curiosity about a topic. And very often, these curiosities, while they themselves aren't great research questions, they can lead us to great research questions. So that's a good place to start. But you don't want to let your overall curiosity about a broad topic invade the language that you're using in your research question. So you need to be really clear and really focused. So be concise with your language. So focusing our research question means that our question's not going to be too broad and it's not going to be too narrow. Now, I've talked about this previously in some of our other videos. If it's too broad, you'll never be able to answer it. Remember, even though you're writing a dissertation, which may be 100 or 200 pages, or you're writing your master's thesis, or even if you're writing a research paper, whatever the scope of your research is, it has to be answerable within the context of your paper. So if it's too broad, you're not going to be able to answer the question perhaps at all, and you're certainly not going to be able to answer it within the space allotted within your paper. And you don't want it to be too narrow. So if it's too narrow, you're not going to have enough to say, or it's going to be so focused that it's not going to be answerable. And we're going to talk more about this when I talk about making sure your question is researchable. Not too easy. So yeah, we don't want our research questions to be too easy. Remember, it's not a simple Google search. You're doing high-level academic research. So you're trying to make a deep scholarly exploration of a challenging topic. So you don't want to just say something like, do does improved self-efficacy help students to write better. Yeah, I mean, I think we could all agree that when that enhanced self-efficacy helps students to be better writers. We want to go a little bit further than that. We don't want to say, do online writing labs help make students better writers? Do university writing labs improve the quality of student writing? We want to go a little bit further than that because, first of all, it's not descriptive enough, right? What do we mean by improved quality of writing? We have to narrow that down. What do we mean by students? Is it first year freshman undergraduate students? Is it doctoral students? So we want to be a little bit more focused. We don't want something that's too easy. And we don't want it to be too difficult, right? So remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Where, yeah, we're hopefully writing about something that we're really passionate about. We're really curious about this topic. And it's very natural for students to go out there and say, my doctoral dissertation or my master's thesis is going to answer these tremendous questions that have been left unanswered for so long. And it's going to be this groundbreaking contribution to academia. Remember, we're a small part of a bigger picture, right? We're looking, when we talked about establishing the scope for our research, we said that we were going to look at what academics before us did. We're going to read articles and we're going to look at future directions for research. What needs to be done to stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And after we make our contribution, others are going to come after us and they're going to contribute, right? So we're just sort of adding a small piece to the puzzle. And others before us have put that puzzle together, and others who come after us are going to continue to build on it. So we're just contributing a small piece. And you have to be able to answer the question within the scope of your paper, right? And I talked about that previously. You can't do something that's so difficult that you can't answer it within 200 pages. And it needs to be researchable. This is really, really important. If you narrow your focus so much, you might not be able to sample that population. And you need to be able to do that in order to answer your questions. You need to have access to the material, and most importantly, you need to have access to the data. I actually did a study that I thought was really good. My advisors thought it was really good, but I did not have access to the data. It needs to be analytical. Don't stop at a simple description. Okay, this could be the start of what you're doing. Uh, you might want to say, um, do uh, do writing labs exist on campus at universities in Myanmar? Um, how many writing labs exist at universities in Myanmar? Or um, are there mental health services available to students in Ethiopia? You're just telling me what's there. It's just a description. It's not analytical. And we want to move beyond a simple description. We want to analyze it. Remember, go further. So, you could ask, to what extent does the existence of campus writing labs contribute to first year freshman students self-efficacy with their English composition one classes, something like that. So you've got some simple description, but you're going further and completing an analysis. Moving on now, I want you to apply what we talked about today to your research. So think first about your introduction. Hopefully you've gone through and you've applied the CARS model to your research. You've thought about carving out, first, you need to establish your territory, and you've talked about why this research is important, why this topic's important. You've established a niche by talking about what's been done previously in your research or in your area of interest, and what gaps still remain. By doing this, you're establishing for the reader what remains to be done. You're carving out that gap, and that's where you come in and you fill that gap. You say, okay, now I'm going to contribute to this by doing this. And you've got a very polished, focused thesis statement, and that should align with your research questions. So try and think of three good research questions. You don't necessarily need three. I'd say you need at least two. But I think three is a good place to start. You also don't want to have too many because you want some focus, some context to your study. Right? Remember what I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not trying to solve all the world's problems. And again, I'll say one more time, remember, whatever your advisor says is the correct answer, right? The best advice I got during my PhD was your job is not to change the world. Your job is to get a PhD. After you finish your PhD, go out and change the world. But until that time, just focus on doing what your advisor says, doing what your committee says, and working towards completing your studies. So good luck to all of you. Thank you for joining me for another video, and I'll see you in our next video at the Language Arts Gallery.